Daniel watched the sky like it held the answers to questions he was too afraid to ask. From the tiny window of his family's apartment, he traced the silver streaks of airplanes carving paths through the clouds. He imagined what it must feel like, to sit in one, to see the world from above, to leave behind the cracked sidewalks and flickering streetlights, if only for a little while. But dreams like that weren't for kids like him. His mother's tired voice broke through his thoughts. "Daniel, dinner's ready." He turned away, forcing a smile. There wasn't much food, but his mother always made it seem like enough. His father would be home late again, and tomorrow would be another day of watching, hoping, wishing for something that felt too impossible to say out loud. Still, deep inside, he carried a silent wish. One so small the world had never noticed it, but someone was about to, and that someone had the power to make the impossible real. The stadium was a whirlwind of noise, fans chanting, cameras flashing, security rushing to control the chaos. Cristiano Ronaldo stood at the centre of it all, moving through the crowd like a man used to the madness. To the world, he was untouchable, a living legend, the kind of person who seemed larger than life. But no matter how far he'd come, he never forgot where he started. As he signed jerseys at a children's charity event, his practiced smile never faltered. He had done this 1,000 times before, posing, autographing, shaking hands. Yet tonight, something felt different. He noticed him immediately, a boy standing at the back. No phone in hand, no shirt to sign, just watching. Unlike the others, Daniel wasn't pushing forward. He wasn't calling Ronaldo's name or waving his arms. He just stood there, still and silent, his wide eyes filled with something deeper than excitement. Ronaldo's instincts kicked in. He walked over, crouching slightly to meet the boy's gaze. "Hey there," he said with a warm smile. "What's your name?" Daniel hesitated. "Daniel." "Nice to meet you, Daniel." Ronaldo expected the usual, an autograph request, a photo, maybe a nervous handshake, but Daniel only stared, then quietly said, "I just wanted to see you." The words were so simple, yet they landed heavier than any cheer from the crowd. Ronaldo studied him for a moment. This wasn't just a fan. This was something else. Something told him that this boy's story was just beginning. And somehow, he knew he was meant to be part of it. A sharp wind cut through the night as Ronaldo left the event, but his mind was elsewhere. The boy's quiet voice echoed in his thoughts. "I just wanted to see you." It wasn't the words, it was how he said them. No excitement, no desperation, just quiet longing. Something told Ronaldo that there was more to Daniel's story than a simple admiration for a footballer, and he wasn't the type to ignore his instincts. "Find out who that boy is," he said to his manager as they walked to the car. A few calls later, Ronaldo had his answer. Daniel lived in a small apartment on the outskirts of town with his parents. His father worked long hours at a construction site, barely earning enough to keep food on the table. His mother took cleaning jobs whenever she could, but there was never enough to spare. And vacations? That was a word that didn't exist in their world. Ronaldo exhaled, staring out the car window at the city lights flashing past. He knew what it felt like to want something so badly that it hurt, to watch other kids get things you never even dared to ask for. And in that moment, he made a decision. The next day, Daniel sat on the steps outside his apartment, absent-mindedly kicking a loose stone. His mother had sent him to the store to buy rice, but he lingered, stretching out the walk. His mind was still replaying last night, the moment Ronaldo had spoken to him, the way his idol had looked at him, not past him, not through him, but at him. A part of him wished he had said more, that he had found the courage to tell Ronaldo what he really wanted, not money, not jerseys, not even a chance to see him play, just one vacation. One moment where his family could step outside of survival mode and just breathe. But it was foolish to think about. He knew that. With a sigh, he stood, tucking the few coins his mother had given him into his pocket. Just as he turned the corner toward the store, he froze. A sleek black car was parked outside his building, and stepping out of it, dressed in a casual hoodie and jeans, was Cristiano Ronaldo. Daniel's heart slammed against his ribs. Impossible. The world seemed to tilt as Ronaldo looked around, his gaze scanning the street, until it landed on him. A slow smile crossed the footballer's face. "Hey, Daniel." Daniel stood rooted to the spot. He tried to speak, but his throat refused to cooperate. Ronaldo chuckled. "I hope I'm not interrupting your day." Daniel finally managed a shaky breath. "What? What are you doing here?" Ronaldo leaned casually against the car. "I wanted to talk to you. You up for a little drive?" Daniel blinked. He turned his head toward his apartment, half expecting his mother to rush out and tell him he was dreaming. But this was real. Without another word, he nodded. They drove in comfortable silence for a few minutes, the city blurring past. Daniel was too overwhelmed to speak, his fingers gripping the seat like it might disappear beneath him. Finally, Ronaldo broke the silence. "You know, when I was your age, I had a dream too." Daniel glanced at him, wide-eyed. "I wanted to be a footballer," Ronaldo continued, "but I didn't just dream about playing. I dreamed about giving my family a better life, about seeing the world, travelling beyond Madeira, beyond Portugal." He turned to Daniel, his expression unreadable. "Do you have a dream like that?" Daniel hesitated, then nodded. His voice was barely above a whisper. "I just want to go somewhere with my family. Just once." Ronaldo didn't answer right away. Instead, he pulled the car into a quiet park and turned off the engine. "I heard your story, Daniel," he said, leaning forward. "I called some of the organisers after the event. They told me about the kids they were helping, and your name came up. I know your parents work hard. I know they've never had the chance to take you anywhere. And I know that a vacation feels like something that only happens to other people." Daniel swallowed, his fingers tightening in his lap. "But that changes today." Ronaldo reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope. He placed it gently in Daniel's hands. Confused, Daniel glanced up at him, then down at the envelope. His fingers trembled as he peeled it open. His breath caught. Inside were plane tickets, hotel reservations, an itinerary filled with places he had only ever seen on TV. His family wasn't just going on a trip. They were going on a dream. His mother's name, his father's name, his own name, right there on the tickets. Daniel's vision blurred as he looked up at Ronaldo, his lips parted in stunned disbelief. Ronaldo smiled. "Dreams shouldn't stay dreams, Daniel." A choked sound escaped the boy's throat. He wanted to say something. Thank you, scream, cry, but his emotions tangled into a knot in his chest. Ronaldo reached over, ruffling his hair. "You deserve this. Your family deserves this." For the first time in his life, Daniel felt something he had never allowed himself to feel before. Hope. Daniel barely remembered how he got home. His legs felt like they weren't his own as he climbed the stairs to his family's small apartment, clutching the envelope in his trembling hands. His mother was in the kitchen, stirring a pot of soup that was more water than anything else. His father sat at the table, rubbing his tired eyes after another long shift. They looked up as Daniel walked in, his face unreadable. "Daniel?" his mother asked, concern creeping into her voice. Slowly, he set the envelope on the table and opened it. The tickets spilled out like pieces of a dream. His mother's wooden spoon clattered to the floor. His father leaned forward, staring as if he couldn't trust his own eyes. "Daniel, what is this?" Daniel tried to speak, but his throat closed. Instead, he whispered, "Cristiano Ronaldo gave it to me." The room remained frozen for what felt like an eternity. Then his mother shook her head. No, this can't be real. It's a mistake." Daniel swallowed hard. "It's real, Mom." His father picked up one of the tickets, his rough hands trembling. "A trip? A real vacation?" "To the Maldives," Daniel said softly. His mother gasped. She sank into the nearest chair, covering her mouth with both hands. Daniel expected his father to question it, to insist there was some catch. But instead the man let out a shaky breath, something between a laugh and a sob. "I've never even left the city," he murmured. Neither had Daniel. Neither had his mother. Yet, here they were, on the verge of something that had once seemed impossible. His mother's eyes shone with tears. But why would he do this? Daniel thought back to the moment in the car, to the way Ronaldo had looked at him. Not as a stranger, not as a charity case, but as a boy who deserved a chance to believe. He said dreams shouldn't stay dreams. A week later, Daniel stood in an airport for the first time in his life. He clutched his mother's hand tightly, staring wide-eyed at the massive departure board flashing destinations he had never thought he'd see up close. His father was uncharacteristically quiet, adjusting his wrinkled jacket every few seconds as if he didn't quite believe he belonged in a place like this. Then over the loudspeaker, Flight 247 to Mali is now boarding. Daniel's heart pounded. This was real. This was happening. As they walked toward the gate, something caught Daniel's eye. A figure standing near a private entrance. Ronaldo! Daniel stopped in his tracks. Ronaldo smiled and gave him a small nod. No cameras, no media. Just a silent moment of understanding between them. Daniel didn't need to say anything. He simply smiled back. And then, with his family beside him, he stepped onto the plane toward a world he had never known, toward a dream that for the first time belonged to him. The ocean stretched out like liquid sapphire, the waves gentle and endless. Daniel stood barefoot on the warm sand, the salty breeze playing with his hair. His parents sat on the wooden deck behind him, their laughter light and free in a way he had never heard before. For the first time in his life, they weren't worried about bills, about work, about surviving. For the first time, they were simply living. Daniel closed his eyes, letting the sun soak into his skin. Maybe, just maybe, dreams weren't meant to stay locked inside. Maybe sometimes the world had a way of listening to the quietest wishes, and maybe, just maybe, miracles were real, because he was living one.